This is lecture video 512 through 524, chapter 18, starting off with inventing technology in the new electrical age. We had water power, we then moved to steam power, and now technology as far as electricity goes is going to transform society and have a major impact. It'll help increase the scale of production um, uh, as we move from steam to electricity, where now manufacturers are free from being dependent on water. You don't have to be near water. You can just be near a power pole. Uh, the United States became a technological innovator. Between 1870 and 1900, 900,000 patents were issued in the United States alone. Edison is amazing. Thomas Edison had a campus, like a college campus. They invented things every day. 10, 15 things a week, a major invention every month. He stimulated research in Europe and the United States, and it gave the invention process, not only by him, but by everybody, gave the United States a commanding technological lead. Now, he was not a perfect person. He invented the light bulb, or he figured out a way to make a light bulb work, but he also had a photographic memory, and so if you went to him and showed him your design and your idea, he would just basically rewrite the blueprint and file for a patent underneath before you could and steal your idea. He was known for doing that. But this is what Lower Manhattan looked like. Not much different than it's an older version, of course, but just think that they didn't have the technology to build a subway, so they put it above ground. They have rail cars, like our buses today. We got railways, lights. Things are becoming more and more modern. The modern corporation supplied the structural framework for transforming American economy. It is significant. If you have a business started by two individuals and as a partnership, when one of those members dies, the business ends. And you have to buy out the one person who died. You have to pay their family. And when the owners of it die, it ends, and you are responsible for everything, all of your debt. Now, when a corporation is brought in about, corporations are great because it outlives their original owners. It can live on like Coca-Cola and Apple and everything else. It can just keep moving along. Also, you're only responsible for you're not responsible for all the debt. The corporation is. You're responsible for only what you own. Corporations are significant, as I stated earlier. The American economy grew in the 1850s when railroad companies grew, but now now a corporation can own a whole bunch of different railroad companies and diversify, and you have like Frito-Lay, which owns Doritos and a bunch of all the other brands. They're owned by Pepsi. Pepsi owns a whole lot of different companies. Coke is the same way. Apple owns a whole bunch of companies. Google owns a whole bunch of companies. Amazon owns a whole bunch of companies. So these corporations own a whole bunch of little other ones as well. Here are the two major advantages, as I stated before. Of a corporation, the corporation can outlive its founders, and its officials and shareholders are not personally responsible for its debt. Large corporations change the nature of the work and stimulated urban growth. So it's just amazing what the corporation can do. Now, what is very important here is using vertical and horizontal integration, which helps corporations reduce competition and dominate industries. So what you need to remember about horizontal, and we talked about this in class, and hopefully you got this vertical and horizontal integration, because these 2 points are important, is that one, vertical is from the ground up. You own everything in the supply line from the ground up. And then horizontal is everything from all your competition, everything on the same level as you. Okay. And so if you didn't get this in lecture, because we spent a long time talking about this in lecture, if you don't have this, okay, you need to make sure you come back and talk to me so you can understand this, because it's a huge point. Trust, another word for a trust is a monopoly. By 1906, the industrial labor had been everything in industrial labor had been reduced to minute, low-skilled operations, making skilled artisans obsolete. Artisans are ones that make things by their own hands. A factory can turn out tables and chairs so much faster, and of the same quality with much more quantity than like a artisan can, who has to make everything by hand. Mechanization and technology did not reduce employment, which is surprising because, man, you need more people. Everything's getting made faster, but all these factories are producing more, so they need more workers. But it did eliminate some jobs. So you may have to change a job, but you didn't lose your employment, if that makes sense. Industrial workers showed little of the wealth. Industrial expansion is seen by the factory owners and the factory managers. But the everyday Joes who work in the factories labored under unsafe conditions, generally working 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for low wages. And workers live close to the factories in poor environments. We've talked about these from the first factories that we talked about last semester, really. And you worked day in and day out, 10 hours a day or more, 6 days or 6.5 days a week for low wages. You're working, your spouse is working, your children are working, everybody's working to just try to make the family survive. Many workers labored in small, cramped, poorly ventilated rooms known as sweatshops. And there are no real regulations at this point. You can see, obviously, no regulations on what they're putting into the environment as far as pollution goes. Many industries employed children, including mining, garment, and textiles. They can get in, they're small, they can get inside machines. They also can do work. As young as 3 or 4 years old, they're working, and they don't have to pay them as much, which is another bonus. Women also don't get paid as much as men, and they have more job opportunities opening to them because factory owners are going, hey man, I can pay these women way less, and still keep them in the poor working conditions and still make the same amount of money. Women also found employment in downtown department stores. They start gaining access at the beginning of the 20th century, aka turn of the century, in the 1900s, and they gain access to higher education, aka college. But the growing gap between the rich and the poor concerned working women, led to reform movements. We see tenement apartments that were crammed with the urban poor, and settlement houses arose to deal with the wretched conditions under which the urban poor lived. Industrialists, intellectuals, and some politicians supported the gospel of wealth theory that supported the poor was of doubtful value. Okay, helping the poor is not going to really help them. They can't help themselves. So this is a very different time frame. We are going to get into the point where we talk about progressivism. We're on the verge of that, and progressivism will show how much we need to progress and things that we need to change. But social Darwinism uses Darwin's theory of evolution, survival of the fittest, and it puts it towards humans. It's sad to say, but if you can't survive, if you don't work, you're not going to eat, which is a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. They want to work, they want to do those things, but unfortunately, they just don't have the tools to be able to do that, and that's why intellectuals today, educators today, say college is so important, because college, at least some sort of college, excuse me, gives you the tools to succeed in society. One of the most important settlement houses was founded by Jane Addams in Chicago, and it was named Hull House. And settlement houses are there to help out the urban poor, especially immigrants. Workers start to organize with all the tumultuous times of the late 1800s into the 1900s, social tensions. We start to see some um, workers uniting, and one of the first ones is in 1877, a railroad strike. And it's notable for the way workers cooperated with one another. We have the Knights of Labor that's founded in 1869, and they lead for a movement for an 8-hour workday. But employers respond with court orders and arrests. And then another labor organization is the American Federation of Labor, the AFL. And they became the major union for skilled workers. They stressed collective bargaining. Collective bargaining is you ask for everything, your pie in the sky sort of thing. Like, I want a 6-hour workday, I want to be paid $200 an hour, and I want health benefits, and I want a 30-hour week. And then the company comes back and laughs at you and says, we'll give you this, and this, which is nowhere near where you want to be. But then you're going to settle somewhere in the middle. And if you collectively bargain everything across the board, it makes it a whole lot easier for you to get at least some of the things that you want. But we do see violent strikes at the Homestead plant and the Pullman factory, which are major setbacks for unions. Another thing that weakens unions are immigrants, just for the simple fact that they're harder to unite. They don't speak English, most of them, and so it's hard to unite people that don't speak the same language and are coming to America to help get successful in society, help get economic independence, and that's why they left their countries. So they're willing to work. They're not going to go on strike. The late 19th century is a period of unprecedented worldwide population movements. Talking about these immigrants, between 1870 and 1910, the U.S. received 20 million immigrants, and we want them. Come on. Come on. We want you because we have land, we have factories, we have cities that we need to be filled and things to grow. And you can see all the main places that they do come from that we talked about at length in class. Economic hardships and religious persecutions triggered migrations. It may be political upheaval. It may be racial. It may be religious, like anti-Semitism. Chinese immigration was prompted while a land shortage drove Japanese immigration. Japan's a small island. They don't have a whole lot. So they only have a certain amount. So therefore, they got to move because there's not enough land. Most immigrants are young men, but by 1900, the number of women equals the number of men immigrants. This is called chain migration. It involved the migration of an entire village, starting with a few men. They would work and then send for a few more men, and then they'd all work and they'd send for a few more men, and then they start sending for the women and the children, and you'd have some villages that would just have the women and children, or the elderly and the children, and waiting to get money sent back for them to come to America. Immigrants maintain their cultural traditions through the establishment of religious and communal institutions. They reinforced old world culture. This is where immigrants are told to assimilate to America, and where the whole idea of America being a melting pot, like we talked about in class, which I completely disagree with, and when we talked about how I did and gave you examples of individuals in your class. Immigrants perceived their job as independence. Immigrants received their first job with the help of somebody from the other country. They stay in their own little ethnic communities, but their skills, their local economy, and the local discrimination often determined the type of work that was available to each one of them. The goal of most immigrants was to work for themselves, own their own business. And in doing so, they thought they would be successful. And I'm going to stop right there.